Tonight, Swamp Thing shares the story of him sneaking into a movie theater, and it's just the best thing I've ever seen. Batman Eternal decides to tug at my heartstrings with a character death, and Harley Quinn pushes the envelope by publishing a comic that literally smells like weed. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 165 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and it's a fifth week. I always do that. I always get really excited for fifth weeks, and for good reason, because fifth weeks, for anybody who isn't in the know, how did you get to episode 165 without being in the know? But I will still tell you, fifth weeks are lighter weeks. Fifth weeks are DC saying, hey, we operate off of a 4 weeks per month schedule, and the fifth week is reserved for Jeff Johns missing his deadlines and annuals. So that's what we had this time. Not the Jeff Johns thing, though, surprisingly enough. No, we instead have a couple of annuals here, a few other books that were just delayed and had to take a little extra week to get ready. And the other thing I do on this show during fifth weeks is I cover backup stories. Because, like, you know, if I'm talking about friggin' Justice League or whatever, you don't want me to stop entirely and then say, and then in Shazam, this happens. You want to hear all the Shazam stuff together. I get that. But DC suddenly stopped doing backup stories, and that's not, you know, wholesale true. There is still like one or two going on, but it's just that there's one since the last time I had a fifth week. And I'm not going to do a whole backup section for one backup story. So I'm going to put it off till the next one, which I'm absolutely certain will bite me in the ass because that fifth week will be the one that has like 17 comics coming out. But regardless, I'm going to put it off. No backups this month. We're just going to focus on the big comics. So, with that being said, what are the big comics? Well, in terms of the annuals, we have Harley Quinn, Justice League United, Justice League Dark, and Swamp Thing. In terms of the delayed comics that just needed a fifth week to come out, we have Sinestro and Wonder Woman. And then in terms of weeklies, we have what we always have, Batman Eternal, Future's End, and World's End. Now, the big things that I need to note out of that. The annuals, for the most part, all doing their own thing. You don't really need to know much about those. No big events are going on. In the two delayed books, though, Sinestro is tying into Godhead, as are all of the Green Lantern books, so I'll give a bit of context on that when I get there if you have been paying attention to those. But Wonder Woman's the big one because it is the finale of the Brian Azzarello run on Wonder Woman. And not to spoil my thoughts too much, but it's a choice. They take some swings there, so find out if that worked out well. But yeah, that is pretty much everything I need to cover going into it. I guess we will go ahead and just get right on into... Let's start with the annuals. Justice League United Annual Number 1, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Neil Edwards. So last issue was issue number 5, and at the end of the issue, Mon-El from the Legion of Superheroes busted into the bunker and said, hey, that alien baby Ultra needs to die, or else the Legion of Superheroes will die. And we open up on that exact same panel here, and Martian Manhunter is immediately like, screw that, man, I'll die before I'd let you do anything to this kid. So they immediately start fighting each other, throwing punches like crazy. Alana is ready to jump into the fight. She's got a gun trained on Mon-El, and then all of a sudden, Zeta Beam switch. It's Adam there. He's drinking a cocktail, and he's like, wow, this wine's pretty good. Where am I? So he immediately starts reaching for his gun. Mon-El just casually walks forward because, of course, he's basically Superman. He doesn't have to worry about that stuff. He grabs hold of Adam, throws him across the room. Or I should say he's about to, as Equinox finally gets involved and blasts back Mon-El a little bit. Freezes him in ice. They try to figure out, like, okay, what do we do? And Adam's like, where is everybody else? It's like, they went into space to deal with Hawkman. It's like, Hawkman's dead. What do you, huh? So then he busts out of the ice, and now he's pissed off. And he's like, look, I know who you guys are. Equinox, Adam Strange. I know their history. I'm like you. You gotta trust me that this kid's gotta be destroyed. So then we go up to the bar that Supergirl, Stargirl, Animal Man, and Green Arrow have busted into looking for info on Hawkman's transmitter. And immediately Animal Man's like, okay, a lot of bounty hunters. Let's just keep our cool. Let's not do anything rash here. And Supergirl's like, yeah, but these guys are asking for it. So she just rushes in and just starts punching the crap out of a bunch of guys. Everyone else is forced into the fight, trying to defend themselves. And Supergirl's like, whoever wants to talk, whoever got the transmitter off of Hawkman's body, talk and I'll stop hitting you. And eventually they manage to track the transmitter down to this one alien that's running down the hall. Supergirl just flies off after. Green Arrow, who's supposed to be leading the team, is like trying to get her attention, trying to calm her down, but it's not working. So she gets a hold of the guy and is basically like, okay, did you steal his corpse? What do you do? How did you get hold of that transmitter? And he's like, I picked it off of a merc. He was a mercenary, a Kundian merc. I swear to God, I have nothing to do with any of this. I just bought it off of him. But there was like a weird cult thing going on, and there was a weird priest there. And they're like, priest? What priest? I said, oh, the priest's name was Biff. So we then go back to the bunker. Mon-El is pushing through, trying to get over to Adam Strange and Equinox, saying, like, I'm not a killer, but, like, this is extenuating circumstances. And as Adam tries to talk it out immediately, Alana switches back. And she's like, oh, what? Huh? Back on Earth? And Mon-El has no idea what's going on, but he's confused enough for just a second for Marsh Manor to come in and start throwing punches again. So Mon-El is out just long enough for him to try to connect telepathically when all of a sudden everyone is blasted with a psychic burst. Or I should say, no, it's just Manhunter. But we see that standing behind is Saturn Girl, Brainiac 5, and Phantom, I think it's Girl? Maybe Lass? I don't know. Regardless, they come in and it's like, you will do no such thing. You must hold back. And Brainiac 5 chimes up saying like, hey, he rushed in. He's a little bit pissed off. We'll get to that. We are willing to handle the diplomatic option here. Well, you got to understand like why this kid is a problem for us. And Mon-El wakes back up. He's like, screw it, let me at him. He's got to die. And Marsh Manhunter's willing to throw some more blows again. But Brainiac 5's like, hold on. I got a hologram thing. I'll just show you guys. And so he walks through. We're the Legion of Superheroes. We're from your guys' future. Don't worry about that. We have time travel tech. It's a whole thing. Over in deep space, in a Polaris system near Thanagar, there was a tear in space-time, and out of it came this giant being called Infinitus. And Infinitus started eating up planets, started like consuming them, taking them into himself, and like in just a few minutes, there were several planets that were just gone, Thanagar being one of them. So we launched an attack. We did everything we could. Ultimately, it was a hard-fought battle, and we like did what we could, but like there wasn't enough. Infinitus just could not be stopped at that point. He sent out like this power thing where he had little wraiths of himself that came out and attacked us, and it was not without its losses. Like people died in battle, including Shadowlass, apparently. And apparently that was a romantic entanglement with Mon-El, which is why he's so pissed off. So at that point, we see the scientist team is trying to figure out what to do. They lock onto an energy signature from Infinitus, and they realize that it's already in their archives from Ultra, the young boy from years and years before. So Ultra, the multi-alien, biological deduction, must become Infinitus in the future. So we cut over to the moon of Ringor, former home of some Thanagarian thing. This is where they tracked Bith down to. They got a Zeta beam over there, and Animal Man's like, hey, the teleportation thing, that's all cool and stuff. Can it make like phone calls? And the one dude, Sardath or whatever, is like, yeah, totally. He's like, all right, cool. Go ahead and call up my wife. I have a feeling I need to let her know where I am. So Supergirl goes in, starts investigating the cult of this moon. They come across an infinity symbol, to which Green Arrow's like, hey, yeah, don't worry about that. Look, Supergirl, you do understand what it means when I say I'm team leader, right? Like, you need to be able to work as a team here. And she's like, well, I'm sorry, you were being too slow and you weren't coming to the correct decisions fast enough. I was, so I did it. What are you going to do about it? So at that point, Animal Man gets on the call with his wife, and he's like, hey, yeah, we're on a moon of Ringor or something. I'm not going to be able to take Maxine to her gymnastics lessons. And she's like, oh, but buddy, you promised. He's like, I'll bring her a souvenir. So at that point, Bith shows up. He's now this giant-ass tentacle monster, and he's like, oh, good, my friends from Earth, right on time. And so Animal Man hangs up the call, and the fight starts. And they basically question, like, what did you do with Hawkman's body? Like, You escaped from the Thanagarians. What did you do? And it's like, oh, what, Hawkman? You mean my loyal soldier? And in comes Hawkman saying, Lord Bith, are these the bastards who killed me? So there's an issue there. Back on Earth, we have the Legion still talking, and it's just like, oh, Mon-El's super pissed off. Like, oh, they killed Shadowlass. This kid's gonna have to freaking die. And they're like, whoa, dude, hold on. She didn't die. Like, she got injured, and she looked pretty bad, but we got her stabilized after you ran off into the time bubble to come here and start punching a kid. Like, she's fine. And so Mon-El's like, oh, geez, okay, yeah, sorry. I may have overreacted there. So at that point, Brainiac's like, okay, but like, still, we need to solve this Infinitus problem. Like, it is something that's going to happen. And Mark Manhunter's like, all you got are theories. I'm not seeing any hard proof that this kid's going to be a problem. And Brainiac 5's like, okay, I can't possibly dumb this down enough for you to understand, but you just got to trust I'm smart enough to have run all the possibilities. That's the only answer here. So he says, San Dimas time is always running. The future, we got 36 hours until Infinitus reaches Earth. So therefore, I'm giving us 24 hours to come up with a solution here, or else the rest of the Legion is going to show up and we're going to kill that child at any means necessary. And then all of a sudden, Green Arrow's face shows up in like a telecommunicator, and he's like, hey guys, we could use some help on the moon, please. Not our moon, moon of Ringor. Hawkman, Biff, it's a whole... And then his communication gets shut off as we see him being bashed across the battlefield by Hawkman, saying like, oh, Lord Biff talked about you and your scumbag friends. You guys are the ones who killed me. And Green Arrow's like, I don't even know how you're alive. I don't even know if it is you, but like, if you don't stop hitting me, I'm gonna shoot this arrow down your beak. So we got a whole big fight scene where Green Arrow's fighting Hawkman. The rest of the team is trying to take down Bith that transformed into a dinosaur. Okay. Supergirl punches the dinosaur in the face, so Bith is basically down and out. But as he's coming to, he's just like, oh, Supergirl, you don't understand what's going on here. All of this was my plan. You see, I'm older than you think I am. By infinitudes. I have existed before everything else and all this other stuff. And he basically says that all of this is ordained. All of this has been etched into time, and he's the only one who can see all the pieces. He's the one who's moved everything into place. And the Messiah must be brought here. That is the final thing. And he says, oh, can't you see the Ultra is the Messiah? I've created him to be a vessel. So I've sent my team, all part of my cult, my cadre, to Earth, and they will attack, and they have no idea that it's even coming. So at that point, everyone's getting ready to fight. It's all the people are looking around. It's like, oh, it's time. It's finally happening. And as the Earth team manages to make their way out of the bunker to the surface, come across Bith's cadre of the Church of Infinity, I think it's called. There's all of a sudden a portal in the sky above the moon team, and Supergirl's like, what did you do, Bith? And he's like, oh, I've just observed time and space, but that child will cause Infinitus to be reborn. And then we see through the portal in space, out comes Infinitus. So kind of a bad time overall if he's able to reach through time and space like that. It seems like they didn't have an annual's worth of stuff here. There's a lot of pages in this that are like double page spreads, and it doesn't feel like it needed to be. There's a lot of pages in here where it feels like they're just kind of stretching the panels out to make the conversation last longer. The whole thing with like Buddy talking to his wife, good character development, definitely not relevant to the story at all, eats up 2 more pages. So it definitely felt like this was a normal issue, and they were like, hey, you want to make it an annual? And then they did. I'm not saying it's bad, but it feels very stretched out. So all in all, I think I'm probably just going to give this one a flat 7. Not anything, like again, it's not a bad issue. It's a good enough start to something, though I would say I am a little bit hesitant of Justice League United. Their first like real mission as a team is the biggest threat to the entirety of the timeline. Like all of time and space is at a threat. Maybe start smaller. Maybe just figure out what to do with Ultra without him becoming Space Hitler, you know? So for now, 7. Harley Quinn Annual #1, written by Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by a lot of people, but mostly John Timms. So, obviously I only have the trade edition of this book, but when it was actually put out as an annual, it was a scratch and sniff issue. I will try to point out the places where it was scratch and sniff, but ultimately I have no experience of if it actually worked at all. So, this issue picks up in media res. Harley is facing off against a bunch of gun-wielding Arkham Asylum nurses and orderlies and whatnot. She's got her own gun. She pulls the trigger, ready to fire, and gun doesn't go off. So she's immediately brought in under Dr. Bash and Dr. Bliss, who are the interim wardens of Arkham Asylum. So she gets thrown into a padded room, and she's like, oh yeah, well, you know, this all started because my best friend Pamela Isley called me up and she needed help, and you got to understand, we got a special connection. So we see a few, hours earlier, Harley is lotioning up with some banana flavored lotion, banana buttered, scratch and sniff for that, and she's tanning on the roof of the ceiling, and Tony is there with the poo-slinging catapult, and she's like, hey, we need to fire off another one. How about we aim it at this little tiny little hipster coffee shop that called me out for not being hipster enough and living in like the wrong part of Brooklyn, according to them. And Tony's like, oh yeah, perfect, sounds great. Then Harley's phone goes off. Ivy's on the other side, and she says that she's in some sort of trouble. So Harley goes downstairs to a literal armory room that they've got built up. And she's like, yeah, she hasn't called me for like a week. I thought she was ignoring me, but she's been stuck in this place for 3 days already, according to her. And she's stuck in Arkham. But she's, if she has to go in front of a judge, she's going to get put away forever because not everybody understands the fact that she's a good eco-terrorist. So they say they got to figure out a way to get into the Arkham Asylum. Harley says, hey, I need a parachute. So they go to a skydiving class at Kennedy Airport, and as a bunch of people are being taught how to do skydiving, and they're like, what happens if the second chute doesn't open? She's like, well, then you're going to die. She manages to steal one, and Tony's like, wait a minute, hold on. Won't one of them notice that the chute is missing? And she's like, no, I replaced it with a fake that was just like a towel and some tools wrapped up. And he's like, oh, God, okay, that's murder. All right. So Tony gets the dog poo flinging catapult ready with Harley on it. Another scratch and sniff on that one. That must not have been good. And flings her over towards Arkham Asylum. And she's got great distance. She's doing awesome. I guess Brooklyn is that close enough to Arkham. But she ends up going through a cloud bank, and she thinks she overshot it. So she pulls her parachute quick. And by the time the clouds clear out, she lands in the middle of a mall. She gets a nearby pizza restaurant employee to cut her loose, and then she sees the pizza, scratch and sniff on that one. So then she takes a car, steals it, drives into the gates of Arkham. A bunch of dogs approach, so she just tosses leftover pizza to them, and then we pick up with where the issue began. So as Harley's being brought out by an orderly via taser, she belches, scratch and sniff on that one, and the pizza breath is so overpowering it knocks out one of the guards. She steals his taser, gets the location of Ivy, and then they said that the guard from being tased crapped his pants. Luckily, no scratch and sniff on that one. So Harley makes her way down to where the guard said. She comes across Ivy, who is just out in the open working on like some weird chemical doodads or whatnot with the two new wardens, Bliss and Bash, I believe it was. And Harley's like, hey, Ivy, I found you, great. And Ivy's like, I don't know you, who are you? And so Harley kisses Ivy on the mouth and says, well, there, that would remind you, that tell you who I am? And she's like, no, still not sure who you are. So at that point, Harley freaks out on the warden, says, what'd you give her? When's she going to snap out of it? And it's like, hey, it's just a thing to get her to cooperate. She'll snap out of it in like 20 minutes if we don't up the dose. And Harley's like, good. We're going to sit here and wait for that to happen. And she keeps trying to shake her out of it. Meanwhile, one of them manages to grab a container that has this gas in it, smashes it on the ground, and it unleashes in the room. And according to Dr. Bliss, it is a cannabis psilocybite experimental hallucinatory drug that was from a bad batch. And when I said there are various artists in this book, it's because all four of them, Ivy, Harley, and the two wardens, get their own little subsequence of this hallucinatory thing they go on that there was a scratch and sniff for, and apparently it was just weed. That's all it was. So we open up with Ivy. She comes across Swamp Thing, and Swamp Thing's like, hey, you look pretty. And she's like, so do you. And they start almost getting it on. By the way, this is illustrated by Sejic, Stepan Sejic. Looks fantastic. But then all of a sudden, he starts freaking out. He says he doesn't feel good. He turns to like dust in Ivy's hands. And then Harley shows up with a flamethrower and says, I ain't going anywhere. And she's like, good. So they go out on the town and start attacking looks like a chemical plant with a flamethrower. And as they finish doing so, this giant flower envelops them both. They have a honey bath inside of the flower. And then a giant bee approaches. And Harley's freaking out saying like, hey, that's a giant bee. Are we safe? And she's like, yeah, no, we're fine. We're just the pollen sacs of the flower. So then the bee comes up and starts throwing freaking pickup lines. Are we in a garden? Because I want to put our two lips together. Are you gals wearing space pants? Because your butts are out of this world. And Harley and Ivy, after like 4 of these, take the bee and drown it in the honey bath. And that's the end of that bit. So then we go to a different artist. It is Dr. Bliss's thing. And she is at Arkham having lunch with a bunch of the inmates and Batman, who's there. And they question, why is Batman here? To which he says, the artist thought that he could sell the prints more if Batman was in the comic. So whatever. So then Harley freaks out. She's like, oh, you want to see what I can do with this food? And she causes a explosion by kicking some corn into the wall, which then lets them out onto a beach. Dr. Bliss sees Dr. Batch in her stomach for some reason. And then as she's walking up and down the beach, she sees the head of a monster out in the ocean. People are running away. Turns out it's just Harley who's eating people. Yeah. So then we cut over to Harley's thing. And if you remember, I don't expect you to, in the Comic-Con special for Harley, she introduced a comic she was writing of Puke Girl, I believe it was, or Hurl Girl, that's it. It's a Hurl Girl story. So Hurl Girl is a teacher. She's trying to teach her kids about the Civil War when she overhears a student who's the son of the Joker and Harley saying, my dad made a gun that can turn my mom into a animal. So he's going to use it on her after school. And so Hurl Girl gets her powers, hurls her way across the city until she finds Harley, but she's too late. Joker's already approaching with the gun, and Harley's like, is that a love gun? And he's like, no, and he fires it at Harley and turns not only Harley into a cat, but also Hurl Girl into a bird. And so Harley says, hey, I'm a cat. You might want to get away, Hurl Girl, because I have instincts to kill you. And she's like, right, bye. And Joker's like, I'm sorry, are you not even upset about being turned into a cat? And she's like, why would I be? I have 9 lives now, no big deal. But I am upset that you've been treating me badly all these years. And Joker says, I'm not going to apologize. That's just the way I am, baby. And so Harley uses her cat claws to tear off Joker's face and eat it, and then starts eating the rest of his body. Then her stomach starts feeling upset, so she spits up a hairball that has Joker's personality. And he says, yep, now we can fight crime as a team, as Harley, Cat, and Hairball. And then we cut over to Dr. Bash's, and it's done by Kelly Jones on art. Looks great. And he's basically doing a Sherlock Holmes bit where his Dr. Bliss is his Watson. And just like, there's a serial killer running around, and I know exactly where to find it. So they go to the location. Immediately, Bliss gets jumped by the serial killer, who turns out to be Harley. She comes at Bash with the knife, and he's just like, oh, well, this is clearly just a hallucination, and you can't actually do anything to me here, so I'm going to be coming out of it any second. And so they start coming out of the hallucination, and all 4 of them are just spread across on the ground. Harley's in a cage, I believe, somehow. And it turns out that the guy running the lab is an egg. He's an egg in like a suit with tentacles and stuff, and everyone's like, okay, so we're still hallucinating, right? And he's like, aha, no, I will tell you my origin story because I'm real. And they just interrupt him, just like, no, seriously, like this guy's definitely hallucinating. There's no way this is that weird that's what's going on. Ivy's also under the control by now. So the egg thing jumps in, just like, silence! You're going to do my bidding or else I'm going to kill your friend here. And Ivy just like punches him up in the sky. And they realize that he's not actually a hallucination, but he is definitely an egg. And he's like, but you see, I've made multiple suits, some with tentacles, some with hands. Let me go get one. And so he goes off to the next room, and they're all talking about, I wonder what suit he's going to bring out. I hope it's the one with tentacles. And so he comes out with a suit that is just a pair of legs and a bunch of tentacles all around it to pick stuff up. And they introduce him as Dr. Edgar Fullerton Young. And he has 52 different suits that he can wear. He's master of the cosmos, and they will die by the tentacles of death. And then he tries to share his secret origin again. And they shut him down, and they each give a little guess of like, wait, hold on. Before you say, let me guess. You were at the egg factory, and there was a chemical accident that turned you into an egg. And then Ida goes on this long one about how you were one of 5 children with a birth defect, and only your head survived. And then you were in the circus, and you were with the bearded woman, and she flushed you down the toilet, and you became an egg here. Bliss says something about an alien planet, and 2 people sending you off on a rocket ship, and she's like, that sounds derivative. And then Bash says something about a giant alien chicken before Edgar jumps in, grabs him, throws him down to the ground, and says, you know what? You all suck, and you're not even going to get to hear my origin story, because my origin story was so cool. It had all these incredible things to it, and he gives a long-ass list. And he's like, and you guys are inconsiderate, and you suck. And he starts crying, and they're just like, we're sorry. Look, share your story, man. We want to hear it. Please, go ahead. Pretty please. And so 3 hours pass. He finishes telling his story, and he explains, and that's why I wanted to capture you, Ivy, because I needed to make a potion to make people like me and treat me like everybody else. And everyone's sobbing over it. And she's like, well, why didn't you just tell me? And he's like, well, I couldn't risk you saying no because I needed to make my landlord like me because I'm about to get kicked out of my place in 2 days. And it was rent controlled. And Harley jumps in saying, hey, I just had a tenant move out of my place. I can give you a room and you can move in whenever you want. And he's like, oh, for real? And she's like, yep, totally. So they hug. She burps again. It gets another scratch. And so at that point, we see Edgar moves his stuff in to the room. Tony says, hey, man, do you got a job? You need to be able to pay rent. And he's like, oh, no, I don't. I've never had a job before. No one's ever given me one. And Tony's like, well, you got all those tentacles. You can hand out drinks and food at the shows. So there you go. Pays crap, but you'll be able to pay rent. And he's like, oh, thank you so much. So Harley and Ivy go up to the roof. Ivy thanks Harley for showing up and doing what she could. And once again, she pulls out this giant vial, and she's like, hey, I stole this from the lab before we left. And she uncorks it, and Ivy says, no, Harley, it's too powerful. It'll make the rest of New York smell like this. All of Brooklyn will be hallucinating. And she says, don't worry, I think no one will notice. And if you scratch and sniff that one, it's once again weed. All right. Where do I begin? This is exactly what I expect from this book. I cannot begin to tell you how strange of a story it was. Like, this is absolutely written with the idea that, like, either Amanda Connor or Jimmy Palmiotti went up to DC Editorial and they said, hey, can we do a scratch and sniff book? And then they just wrote the story around that. They also had the other artists showing up in there, just so I can give the other ones credit. I'll see if I can find that name real quick. So, like I said, Kelly Jones and Stefan Sejic. There was also Joe Quinones and Ben Caldwell on art. So it wasn't a bad-looking book by any means. It's just so frenetic and out of nowhere. And you just know the Edgar guy's going to show up again. So this book is actually critical for the sake of, like, where the hell did this random egg dude show up from? You got to read this issue to find out. It's not my thing. I'm sure people would get a kick out of this book, but, like, I'm reading this, I'm picking up on where the smells are supposed to be. It's just a lot. I'm going to say this one for me is like a 6, but I'm sure that other people would give it much higher. But, like, God, just, I kept wanting it to end. Justice League Dark Annual Number 2, written by J.M. DeMatteis, art by Klaus Johnson. So this technically takes place before Justice League Dark number 35, which came out the week prior. it's just the start of like that arc. It's a Kickstarter thing, and it basically does start independently. The only thing you need to know is Zatanna's running the Justice League Dark, and Constantine was booted from the team. But we pick up in Paris, where Constantine has managed to convince Zatanna to come and just share a drink with him and talk for a while, and she's immediately skeptical, like, oh, what, you want back in on the team, or you want the house back, you want the House of Mystery. Yeah, I know your game, Constantine. And he's like, genuinely just want to chat with you, just want to catch up, like, I still love you, like, don't think that that's not there. And she's like, okay, well, that's, hold on, wait a minute, you must have put some sort of love enchantment in the wine that I've been drinking. How dare you? You're betraying me. I'm out of here. And he's like, what are you? I didn't do anything. And he yells after her. She's leaving, goes back to her hotel. As she's laying in bed, Constantine comes up, knocks on the door, and he's like, look, just give me 2 minutes, and then I promise you'll never see me again if you really don't want to. And she comes over and answers the door. She's like, all right, clock's ticking. What do you want? And he's like, I didn't put anything on the wine. If you felt something, it was genuine. If you felt something, it was real. And I'm begging you, just give into that. Just explore that for a minute. And so they fall into each other. They share a kiss, and everything goes dark. And when Constantine wakes up again, all of a sudden, he is in an Escher, staircases everywhere, laying in a messed up bed. The panels literally rotate around the page here, and he's like, where am I? Where's Zatanna? I don't even know what's going on. Right? Did she banish me to another dimension after we were done? Like, what happened here? And as he manages to figure out, like, okay, it feels like something's different, like my mind's been inverted and my soul's not right, but like I'll cast some spells, I'll get everything back in order. And he starts looking around and he's like, is this the House of Mystery? Like, I don't recognize it like this, but it might be. And he enters into a room. There's a whole bunch of dark figures standing around, as well as a book in the middle. And the book is just titled John Constantine. And he's like, the book is whispering to me. I don't know why I want to read it. And I know I shouldn't be reading it, but something's drawing me to read from it. And as he reads, he realizes that this book has all of these secrets that he knows, but he's never shared with anyone. Barely secrets that he's ever accepted himself. And he's like, I just want to sit here and keep reading, but I can't. I gotta stop. And he slams the book shut. And he realizes where he is, and he gives him enough strength to blast out a spell in all directions. And he realizes that all the dark figures in the room were actually just representations of the secrets, of those things that have been carrying him through life. And while they're melted now, they won't be gone for very long. And in walks this beautiful woman, and she's like, wow, bravo, you not many people would be able to stop doing that. They would be trapped by their own shame. And he's like, who are you? And she's like, oh, I'm every room in this place. I'm the shadows on the wall. I'm everything. I am the House of Secrets, not the House of Mystery. So at that point, Zatanna wakes up. She's in the House of Mystery, along with Deadman, Swamp Thing, and Nightmare Nurse. And apparently all of them have just been teleported in here. They were in the middle of other stuff. And they're all pissed off at Zatanna because they think that she's the one who teleported them again. And she's like, I swear to God, this wasn't me. The house brought you here for some reason. It's not. And Swamp Thing's like, I am not a member of this team. I keep on being brought into this book, but I don't want to be here. So I'm out. And he starts leaving, but then the house itself starts curling up like vines and stuff from the floor to keep Swamp Thing in place. And he tells Zatanna, like, why are you doing this? Let me go. And she's like, swear to God, it ain't me, but here, I'll get you out of it. And so she casts a spell. And as he's getting the branches off of him, there's suddenly a mysterious man standing in the room. And he's like, oh, you never fail to impress me, Zatanna, but you already know who I am. And she's like, oh my God, you're the house. You're the House of Mystery. And so they get close together, and Nightmare Nurse immediately pulls out a knife and's got it at the guy's throat. Just like, yeah. Pretty convenient that the physical embodiment of the house just shows up, right? And he's just like, I swear to God, it's me. I don't know how you want me to tell you that. If you want proof, get Deadman inside. He can see on the house. And Deadman's like, fair enough. He goes inside. He just sees it's the house. And so he gets kicked back out immediately. And he's like, all right, yeah, that guy's the house. And immediately Swamp Thing's like, this is stupid. Like, just because Deadman saw a thing doesn't mean that he wasn't put under some spell or something. So no, this is enough tricks. You're clearly evil. You just... Yeah, I'm done with this. And so he goes to attack, but Zatanna gets in the way saying, like, no, seriously, I have vibed with the house. We bonded a lot. This is the house. I'm telling you guys, you got to believe it. And she's like, no, it's literally what I just said. But all the rest of them are like, okay, well, at least let's hear him out. So he says that he wants to prevent a nightmare from engulfing the earth. Apparently, he gives them like a vision of a world destroyed, and he's like, I have a sister, and the sister is the House of Secrets, and what she wants to do is take over all of the houses in the world. She's going to force herself into all of them, and she's going to take it over. And that would mean doom for all of humanity. And they're just like, okay, can we start with a more basic question of like, why are you just now presenting yourself as a physical form when you've never done it before? And he's just like, it's extremely painful, but I'm doing it anyway because this is important. Like, she is going to, in order to make that happen, come after me. She's going to take my power as her own, and she's going to start building up an army. We need to stop her beforehand. And Nightmare Nurse is like, that's a very convincing story, but still, don't believe you. And Zatanna's like, no, seriously, like, it seems real. I believe him, whatnot. And he pulls out the points of saying, like, I've served shelter to you guys. You owe me this at the very least. And then watching through a mirror is Constantine and the House of Secrets. And Constantine's like, okay. And you're saying that he's lying. And she's like, yep, he is absolutely lying. He's going to do that exact same thing once he has any sort of power. He can't be trusted. So immediately the House of Secrets offers up a knife and says, this knife is the blade of Ma'at, the Egyptian god of truth. If you stab somebody with it and they were lying, they'll die, but I wasn't lying. And so Constantine just stabs her with it and says, nobody can dodge the blade of Ma'at. Like, that's seriously impossible. But she ends up living, and he's like, all right, you were telling the truth, so what do you want to do? And the House of Secret immediately summons Frankenstein, Black Orchid, Xanadu, and Andrew Bennett, aka iVampire. And immediately as they arrive, they see John Constantine, and they're just up at his throat like, what is with you guys teleporting us into places we don't want to be? And the House of Secrets steps in, just being like, hey, look, here's the explanation. She gives them the whole rundown, and just like, okay, what are we supposed to do about it? And she says, all right, well, we're going to need to intercept the House of Mystery and convince them that they shouldn't listen to him. Like, we need to get over there and stop them. And they realize how difficult that's going to be because obviously both sides distrust the other one heavily. But Constantine says, look, she passed the being stabbed. She's legit. We got to trust her. And Xanadu's like, I mean, people could survive the stabbing. It's happened before. It's rare, but it's happened. But okay, fine, we'll trust. So at that point, they see the House of Mystery outside the window. Constantine casts a spell in order to go over to it via like a tractor beam or something. House of Mystery reacts just like, oh, it's her, she's here, my sister, we have to be ready to fight. And so Constantine and his crew bash in through the windows like pirate ship style, and immediately Zatanna's like, at first I just want to talk, I just want to clear this up, but it's very clear immediately they're not in the mood to talk. So everyone's paired off, everyone's fighting. Frankenstein v Swamp Thing, Nightmare versus iVampire, Black Orchid versus Nightmare Nurse as well. Deadman against Xanadu, and Constantine versus Zatanna. And eventually Zatanna gets a hold of Constantine. Constantine's like, look, Z, he's lied to you. It's lies. It's all lies. And she's like, oh no, you're the one who's manipulative. You're the one who's lying. And then all of a sudden, Constantine just passes out, and everyone else follows suit one by one. And we see a giant hole opening up in the center of the House of Mystery. And they all fall into it. And then standing on the edge of the hole as they look back up is the embodiments of the House of Mystery and Secrets just holding hands. And outside, the two houses zoom up. They start intertwining, and they crash together to create the House of Wonders. And we hear that both of them speak as one voice now. And they say, yes, we used the magical energy of the Justice League Dark fighting within in order to merge our two houses together, in order to become something better, something bigger. But really what we used was the love and desperate hatred, like the back and forth constantly of Zatanna and Constantine. That's the thing that was really binding this all together. So now we're going to do the whole thing of where we're taking over all the houses on Earth. That is actually the plan we were going to do. So they go down, they immediately start just absorbing the life force of people in houses, and they explain it away as like, you live in a house, you have your dreams in your house, your lives are in your house, so therefore they're able to absorb all that, and people kind of just become zombies. And Zatanna makes the point of saying, I've learned that those things that they show themselves, they weren't the actual embodiments of mystery and secrets. They were a disease that took control of the houses and made them do these things. So it's not actually the house's fault. But Zatanna and Constantine, like the rest of the crew, get up and they're just like, oh God, this is on us. Like, we let this happen. We got too deep into it. And Andrew Bennett's just like, hey, they said that it was your guys' love that caused this. So if we just kill you guys, everything's cool. And he just goes for the murder, like immediately. But Black Orchid stops him saying like, hey, no, there's got to be another way. And Xanadu says there is a spell, more specifically a curse. It's called the Curse of Kamdeva. And what it does is it's Spider-Man 1 more days. It takes away the feeling of love throughout all of their timeline. It makes it so that they never love the other person. However, it's a curse because one person on one side of it forgets everything and never felt anything, while the other person has to live with it and remembers it for all time. So that's why it is. And they're just like, okay, can we come up with anything else? And they're just like, no, not really. That's about all we got, especially because we need to move damn quick here. So at that point, they say, all right, fine, we're going to need a distraction. So the rest of Justice League Dark go out. They try knocking on the House of Wonder, doing what they can to distract them. And then Xanadu's like, all right, spell is cast. You guys figure out who's going to be the one to forget. And Constantine's like, look, I can't bear to live in a world where I remember our love, but you don't. And she's like, you think I can either? And he's like, you are much stronger than I am. You're going to have to. Sorry. And they both cry together. And Zatanna's just like, all right, goodbye, John. And so Constantine gets hit with the spell. Everything flies apart. We see him all of a sudden get teleported elsewhere. And then the House of Wonder, not being able to keep the spell up anymore, releases its grip on Earth, flies up into space, and explodes. And in the explosion, all the remaining members of the Justice League Dark that were in the house fall into this portal in time and space, which then leads into issue 35. But we go down to Earth. Constantine remembers the spell that was cast on him, the Kamdeva curse, and he's like, all right, I'm somewhere in Europe. I'm not sure where. I'm wherever the rest of the Justice League Dark are. I'm sure Zatanna, she got them out of there safe. No big deal. And Zatanna, like, she's smart. She's pretty. She's good at what she does. Never really cared for her, though. And we see him shed a tear. He doesn't even know why he's crying as he walks away, just saying, like, yeah, she's just not my type. So Constantine no longer loves Zatanna. Character development. I'm actually, that's a big deal. I thought for sure this annual was just going to be like we're fighting the big bad, and then we're just going to go ahead and move into the portal thing that we set up in issue 35. But like, no, that is actually something that's going to matter pretty significantly, I'm sure. I wonder if it's something that does get undone, if Constantine, or if, like, I look back at Constantine comics, is it something where he just has not had a thing for Zatanna since then? Could go either way. But for this one, I think it is very well written. I think the art's a little bit hit or miss in some places, but it's never bad. It's just a little bit like rushed in a lot of ways. But I always understood what was going on, and that's a lot for doing a House of Mystery sort of thing. So yeah, I'm going to say this one is, I'm going to give it a solid 8. I think that last page hit, and like them determining that we got to do a Spider-Man 1 more day, I think that really works in this issue. So I'm going to say this is an 8, and I look forward to the rest of the arc. Swamp Thing Annual Number 3, written by Charles Soule, art by Javier Pina and Carmen Carnero for the primary majority of it. There's a few little sub-sequences in here as well. I'll try to get the names for those. So we open up this issue with Capucine and Swamp Thing fighting against some random-ass demons that pop up, and they are just rhyming things together to the word green. So there's like machine, keen, teen, mangosteen, and Swamp Thing and Capucine just cut them all down. And as they're wrapping up, he's like, hey man, you good? She's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Like, they're not even a thing. They're whatever. And he's like, yeah, well, I'm not sure why they would have attacked me. And she's like, oh, they weren't here for you. They're here for me. And she starts to say that she recognizes them, but then all of a sudden she passes out. And then she falls down to the ground. Swamp Thing catches her, brings her inside, and talks to the guy in charge of the Serene, Gorav. And he's like, I'm not a doctor. Maybe we should take her to like a medical. I'm kind of a priest sort of thing. But Capucine wakes up and she's like, hey, it's not poison. It's not anything they did to me. Like, I was given 1,000 extra years to live, and that's it. Like, my time is up. I'm at the end of my rope here, and I'm finally dying. And remember, that's the whole reason I showed up in the first place, was because my body needs to be protected after I die, and I need you to do that for me. And Swamp Thing's like, well, hold on. We can delay this. I've got some friends in the red. I know a guy named Constantine who's constantly dodging death. And Capucin's just like, no, like, I'm ready to die. I have lived far too long, and I never had a choice in it. But, like, I just need this. And he's like, well, I can make some painkillers for you. I'll put you to sleep until, it's time. And she's like, no. I want to be able to be here for this, for my final moments. How about just tell me a story, make me laugh? And Swamp Thing's like, okay. Before I talked to Superman, I kind of was just trying to connect to humanity a little bit, and I heard there was this movie playing, and I wanted to go, but obviously I couldn't just buy a ticket. So I thought, how do I get into the theater? And I realized that every theater has plants in the form of popcorn. And so we see a popcorn version of Swamp Thing sprout up. It's super tiny, like a foot tall, and it's just hiding in the back of the theater watching the movie. And he only gets to watch maybe like 5 minutes when all of a sudden somebody spots him and freaks out. Swamp Thing goes bolting down the aisle trying to escape. Theater's evacuated. Everyone's investigating. Total disaster. But he's like, but the movie kind of sucks, so maybe I did him a favor. And Capucine makes the point of saying, like, oh, yes, stories should end, not just get another part every few years. They need to end with some sort of finality. And Capucine, like, cringes. There's some pain to her, obviously. And Swamp Thing's like, okay, seriously, let me get you a doctor, at least to, like, help out with the passing portion. And she's like, no. This is coming. This is what's going on. But remember your promise to me. I was only given 1,000 years of extra life because the demon said that it would use my body for something after death. And I am not cool with that. So I really need you to make sure that my body is not taken and used for any ill means. And she falls asleep briefly. And Gorov's like, I'm sorry, hold on, who's coming after you? And she says, oh, it's the demon, Etrigan, the rhymer. And he's like, oh God, oh Jesus, no, not Etrigan, not the rhymer. And Swamp Thing's like, why is he why is that the whole thing? I've been fighting demons forever. Why is he so big? And Gorov's like, no, you don't understand. He is the demon. And we get a walkthrough of Etrigan's backstory, how he bonded with Jason Blood, he did a Stormwatch thing, and over the years, people have been summoning Etrigan to do their bidding. And it's never worked out. It has always been bad, and people have died for it. Etrigan fears no god. He exists to spread evil. He is literally just like badness incarnate. So yeah, he's not something that is easily fought against. And also, Etrigan's not going to try to fight in pure strength. He's going to outwit Alec as well. So if you're going to try to fight him, you're going to need to be smart. And Capucine is like, I know that you're smart enough, man. Like, Etrigan may be a demon, he may be crafty, but you're a god. Like, you can handle this. And I have just one fight left, and I would like you to help me fight it. So we cut ahead. Capucine is seemingly dead. She is sitting in a swamp, little light beam down on her to show how at peace she is. And Etrigan comes up and it's just like, and by the way, he's rhyming the entire time here. And he says, oh, you're not dead yet. Well, maybe there's, something is different about you. You have a different soul inside your body. And Capucine opens her eyes and, using the voice of Alec Holland, speaks and says, yeah, you got that right. In comes giant Swamp Thing fists, punch Etrigan across the swamp, and turns out that they did the switch. They did the serene body switch thing. Alec is inside of Capucine's body, and Capucine is currently the Avatar of the Green. So she's like, oh, you have basically taken my entire life from me. I've lived those 1,000 years always looking over my shoulder, waiting for you to come. I'm going to beat you down. And so she just starts trying to fight as best she can. Etrigan rips off her arm because she's still not totally comfortable in the Swamp Thing body. But the fight continues on because Capucine is not going down that easy. So Etrigan fires off some fire breath at her, then tries to get away. In the hustle of it, Capucine quickly recovers, spitting out the ashes from her mouth. So while she goes off to chase down Etrigan, Alec is left inside of her body. Gorov is there to take care of him. And she's like, yeah, no, I have no idea how Capuchin's even alive right now. Like, this pain is absolutely unbearable. And as she did this, Gorab points out, like, if she's gone and you die, like, that's it. There's no switching back if you're dead in this body. So, like, she needs to make her way back. And Alec is like, don't worry about it. She just needs to do this fight on her own. She'll be back. She's always been there for me. And then Etrigan shows up as like a spirit head, and right next to him, just saying like, oh, you've misplaced your faith. She's going to betray you. She's absolutely done that. And Alec is getting ready to fight. He's like, oh, come at me, man. I'll take you out. And he's like, nah, I'm not here to fight. I'm here to talk. And we cut over to the fight between Etrigan and why am I blanking on Capuchin? And he's, slashes her. And so she pulls out a giant ass metal sword and says like, cold iron. That's your weakness, Etrigan. I know it well. And so Etrigan just snaps his finger and the sword melts. And he's like, doesn't seem very cold to me. So she charges at him again. We then cut back over to Alec. And as he's being helped up off the ground by Gorab, her arm just snaps. And he's like, I'm sorry, your body is so weak right now. Like, you're on the verge of death. This isn't going to last much longer. And Etrigan's like, yeah, you're right. She's lied to you. You don't understand what type of person she actually is. Like, I've watched her whole life. Think back to how she even, like, met you. She killed 2 men in front of you and then asked for sanctuary. That's who she is throughout all the ages. Like, yeah, she's done big warrior stuff, but ultimately she is a murderer at heart. She is a bloodthirsty killer, and she has taken you as a fool and is using you for her own gain here. And I love this sequence here where Alec is like, what are you saying? You're saying this is some sort of ploy from the beginning? And Etrigan's like, maybe my rhymes are a bit too dense for you here, so I'm going to cut the rhyming. And he just like clears his throat. She's playing you, moron. Like, yes, clearly. She showed up, she made you sympathetic to her, and she's been playing on your emotions the entire time. Like, sure, she saved your life a few times, but she also got with Brother Jonah right in front of you, playing up your emotions to make you jealous. She knows that you're the hero, and so you're willing to do this heroic sacrifice play to let her have this last fight. She's not coming back. She's going to own that body, and you're going to die in this one. And Alec's like, no, that's not her. That's not her. It's not how she would be. And Etrigan's just like, it is, but don't worry. I'm going to force her back this direction. I'm going to get her back to you. I'll hurry as fast as I can. So Etrigan continues fighting with Capuchin inside the Avatar's body, and it's a bloody fight. Etrigan's taking some wallops, but Etrigan's like, all right, this is enough. And he rips off the head of the body and just like, seriously, you've been punching me enough, but this is a waste of power. You didn't have enough knowledge of the green to fight me as a true threat. And she's basically like, you know what? Yeah, when I entered the body, I don't fully understand its potential. I watch Swamp Thing do it. I never quite understood how it worked. I could see it, but I couldn't. But now that I've been thinking about it, now that I reach out and feel, I think I've got it. And she wraps some wooden vines, branches around Etrigan, impaling his body over and over again, like through his jaw, through his hands, through his body, until he is completely wrapped up in a tree. And Etrigan's like, all right, fair enough, I may be done, but Alec Holland's going to die because of your lying. And I want you to know, I told him everything. I told him the truth about who you really are. And she's like, no, you didn't. And he's like, yeah, I did. So she makes the case of saying, like, I'm only a killer because you made me a killer. That's all I ever knew, and I had to be that way in order to survive. In order to live, I had to kill. So that's all because of you. And now he waits in agony, and what, you just made it worse for him? How about this? I'll do something, or I will get back to him. I will prove you wrong that I'm not the type that just steals his thing. But first, you and I make a bargain. And we see Alec is on the verge of death in Capucin's body. He's being prayed over by the Serene. And in walks Capucin saying, all right, that's enough. Let's do this. And so the bodies switch back. Capucin is now on her very last moments. And Alec's like, hey, I knew Etrigan was lying. And she's like, no, he wasn't. I am a murderer. I am a killer. That's true. Everything I did before I met you. And Swamp Thing's like, no. He said you wouldn't come back. He said that you wouldn't. But, like, I knew you would. And by the way, I have another story for you. Because you were an avatar of the green just then, because you stepped into the green, your soul, or whatever you want to call it, can be accepted into the green. You can live forever there with Brother Jonah. I can do that for you now. So you've saved me so many times. It's the very least I can do for you now. I don't care who you were. I care about who you are. And he puts Capucine into the green, and the final page is him looking down at the swamp saying, I love you and I'll miss you very much. And that's it. That's the end of that. I didn't expect the Capucine story to be wrapped up so easily. Like, I expected that to be like a whole story arc, not just an annual, but I kind of like it. I kind of like this thing where it's just, no, all of a sudden, like, the magic spell runs out and you got like a few hours of just cough, cough, dying. So, no, it's a very well-told story. The art's also great. I will try to give credit to those artists real quick, see if I can find them. The other artists on the popcorn scene was Ryan Brown. The demon origin scene for Etrigan's thing was Dave Bullock. And as they put Capucine into the green, we got Yannick Paquette doing the art, which that sequence looked fantastic. That really brought me back to the beginning of the Swamp Thing run. So, yeah, overall, great issue. I think I would probably actually give this one... I'm going to give it an 8.5. I think the only thing that's keeping it from the 9 for me is the sequence where we went back through Capucine's like origin story and all that. I understand it's been a while since we've had it and it's like not needed, but it was helpful. But for me personally, wasting like 2-3 pages on her origin story again, I would have much rather something else. But that is the only blemish on this. Popcorn Swamp Thing, top tier. Love him. So yeah, 8.5. Definitely check this one out. Sinestro number 6, written by Cullen Bunn, art by Dale Eaglesham and Martin Coccolo. So this is part of the Godhead event going on, which I think the only prerequisite that you would need going into this is the Godhead one-shot. But just to recap, new gods, they think that the lantern rings have the life equation. They stole one of every ring, and they literally stole it off of Archillo's finger right in front of Sinestro. So he was a little bit pissed off about that. So we pick up on New Korgar, and Sinestro's like, okay, Goddess showed up, took Archillo's ring, one of my rings, would have killed me for it. I don't know anything about her, so what are we going to do about this? And I think it's a Dez, or whatever his name is, one of the new guys, chimes up just like, hey, real quick, sounds like you're like really fond of her and like you're talking about her as if she's like cool, but she like insulted you and she humiliated you, so maybe we should talk less about who she is and just more focus on killing her and getting the ring back. And Sinestro's just like, Des, buddy, if you ever talk back to me again, I'm gonna kill you. So he walks over to Lissa, and it's just like, all right, look, I need you to look into your visions and tell me what's going on there. And she's like, I mean, I'll do it. Clearly, I'll do it. But, like, I have seen visions of your demise at her hands. So that's, like, kind of risky stuff. And he's just like, I'm still here. So what is the vision saying? And so Lissa pulls out the visions and she sees the entire Godhead arc, or at least things currently going on. She sees Guy, John, Hal, Simon Baz all fighting against whatever. There is a army of like blackness that is attacking, and then also Black Ring is around, or sorry, Black Hand, whatever his name is. So then Sinestro's like, all right, cool, so I've already started enacting my plan. And he pulls up a little communicator through his ring to, I'm unfamiliar, but Despotellus, who apparently is a virus called the World Killer, and he's part of Sinestro's core. And he's like, yeah, when she attacked me, I had Despotellus like attached to her, so we have a spy on the inside to see what's going on. So what's up, Despotellus? And he just responds, oh, woman's name is Becca, she's a general, and she's right now attacking the entire Indigo tribe along with some Green Lanterns who are there. Because over in the Green Lantern core book, John Stewart and a couple of the other ones got teleported to Indigo tribe, probably to deal with this. So we see Becca's going in for the fight. Everything's going crazy. All of her subjugates, all of her people who are her soldiers, are 100% into like, just they're willing to die for her, and they say, for your love, for your love, for your love. So Sinestro sees all this going on. Sorenik is in the background like, hey, that's Green Lanterns, we gotta go help them. And Des is like, excuse me, Indigo Tribe being slaughtered and Green Lanterns being slaughtered, that's cool for us. Let's just make that happen. And Sinestro's like, no. The Indigo Tribe is able to teleport anywhere they want, a thing that our enemies clearly have as well. We need them to stay alive. We need their abilities if we're going to be going one-on-one with all the gods. So, Arkillo, I want you to rally all the Yellow Lanterns. And Arkillo's sitting there with a stump of his hand because they lost his ring by having his fingers cut off. And he's just like, don't really know how to do that, boss. So, Sinestro makes him a yellow construct hand. And Arkillo's like, all right, can do. Lanterns are ready to serve. Let's do this. So, he goes off chanting for blood. We see back on the Indigo Tribe planet, they're not doing hot. The new gods, Becca, they're all able to take down the Indigo Tribe, and we see Indigo 1 is just barely staying alive, and Becca's just like, look, there's no need for you all to fall with your planet. We're gonna, get rid of this place, but you guys can surrender and we can end the fight. And Indigo Tribe's just like, no, it's not gonna happen. And we see that's when the Yellow Lantern Corps swoops in and takes out Becca and a bunch of the army, and they just start fighting like crazy, and they start doing a damn good job too. They're starting to overcome the entire thing, and the Green Lantern Corps is looking on like, did we just get saved by the Yellow Lanterns? Why is that happening? So at that point, Becca gets pissed off. She's like, you think you can threaten me? I'm not impressed with your pretty lights. And she just starts slashing everybody with her sword. We see Arkillo, who is, of course, super pissed off because he lost his hand by Becca, just starts charging and is ready to take her down. But as he attacks her, she's like, oh, you've already lost. Look around. Your troops have lost the element of surprise now. My troops are now on the advantage. And you're willing to slaughter your entire tribe for a battle that means nothing for the oncoming war. And we zoom out into space where Sinestro and some of the higher up generals are looking down. And Sorenik's like, hey, we might want to pull out because everyone is dying down there. And Sinestro's like, yeah, that makes sense. Mainly because I sent them down there because there's way too many Yellow Lanterns and way too many of them don't know how to do anything. So I'm just kind of trimming the fat right now, and I'm going to see who's stuck around afterwards. So we then see down on the field, Becca's ready to go, and Sinestro says how impressed he is with how willing all of her soldiers are to die for her cause and just jump in the way of attacks that would be meant for her. So Sinestro calls down to Arkillo and says, all right, time to withdraw. Take your best men, get the Green Lanterns and the Indigo Tribe out of there. And Arkillo's like, all right, first squad, let's go. So they all start leaving the planet, but Arkillo says, all right, second squad, the rest of the Corps, you guys stay back and cover us. And the rest of the squad's just like, what do you mean cover you? We're already sitting ducks here. This sucks. We're already going to die. And all of a sudden the rings say self-destruct protocol initiated, and they realize Sinestro, you son of a... And then all of them, every single one of the remaining Corps members just explodes on the battlefield, taking a bunch of Becca's soldiers with them. And Becca's furious. She's like, you cowards, you sacrificed your own pawns, you betrayed their loyalty, and some sort of... And then one of her soldiers dies at her feet, just for your love, ma'am. And she's like, anyway, I love you, my soldiers, and Sinestro, you are damned. So says I, Becca. So that's the issue. It's fine. I mean, it doesn't really do that much for me in terms of what is Sinestro doing. I kind of like the fact that we're trimming down the Yellow Lantern Corps, but at the same point, that doesn't really make any sense to me with the rest of clearly they would do better to just have more fodder, right? From a writing perspective, I understand it, where you don't want them to be the most overpowered Corps with everyone else being trimmed down, but I don't know. It seems weird to me that he would just be like, yeah, I'm just doing it because I feel like it. So it's not a bad issue. It's just kind of another one of these Godhead issues where we're still setting up the pieces, and we're going to finish up Act 1 pretty soon. So I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7. It's a low 7. It's almost a 6.5, but I think it still manages to just squeak in there at the 7 level. Wonder Woman number 35, written by Brian Azzarello, art by Cliff Chiang. So last issue, Hermes, Wonder Woman, Zeke, and Zola went into Olympus to try to do something there, and they were met by Poseidon, who has seemingly either betrayed them or has always been on the other side. So Poseidon's basically looming over them, and he's just like, oh, hey, thanks, deliver my prize, give me the baby. And Wonder Woman's like, no. And Hermes is like, oh, man, great negotiations there, Diana. You're really doing good at that. So Poseidon gets pissed. He starts to attack. And he manages to wrap one of his tentacles around Wonder Woman. Zeke goes flying onto the floor. And he's like, all right, look, my brothers are gone. Zeus, Hades. No one is ruling anything, but I'm going to go ahead and do it because it's up to either the firstborn is going to do it, which is a bad idea, or a baby's going to do it, which is also a bad idea. So I'm just going to go ahead and step in here. And he picks up Zeke. And then immediately Zola, who doubled over in pain last issue, has a weird look in her eye. She now is able to slice through Poseidon's tentacle with like her bare claws. Her eyes are very bird-like, and she's like, oh, no whining god is going to rule either. And everyone's like, Zola, what's going on with you? And so she jumps up, manages to slash Poseidon in his eye, causes him to just immediately retreat. He's out of the game. And Zola lands next to Wonder Woman, just like, hey, could you tell me what's happening to me? Something's messed up. And at that point, Firstborn and the Minotaur come out, and they're just like, well, I'll tell you what's about to happen to you. We're going to beat you to death. This is your graveyard. And Hermes is like, you stupid idiot. This is a place of immortality. So Hermes jumps over, tries to attack Firstborn. Firstborn immediately just grabs him, just like, what did I do? Like, I know what I did since I came back out, but like, what did I do to get in prison? I was just born first. Is that really that big of a crime? And yes, I'm here to exact my revenge on all of you for that injustice. And so he throws Hermes down, stabs him in the stomach with his own staff. Meanwhile, Diana's taking care of the Minotaur. And she's like, look, whatever it takes, you've done too much damage here during the battle. So she pushes over the Minotaur, stabs him in the chest, and he seemingly goes down. Meanwhile, Firstborn goes after Zola and says like, hey, I want the body of the baby. Come on, don't waste my time. You're not going to be able to stand up to me. So she runs forward, claws him in the chest. Doesn't do anything because it just sprouts out more of his little vein tentacle stuff. Wraps around Zola and the baby. Meanwhile, Wonder Woman gets suplexed by the Minotaur, and she's seemingly unconscious. So all of a sudden, there's a popping noise behind Firstborn. It's Stripe with yet another bottle of champagne, and she's like, I didn't think I'd need two of these, but it's, good party. Why not? Keep it going. So Firstborn's like, whatever. You just stay over there. You'll be fine. And he sees Diana starts coming to just a little bit, and he's just like, all right, cool, you're alive. I want you to see this. This is your failure. I've managed to win. And he takes baby Zeke and dangles him over the edge of just this massive abyss that for some reason is in the middle of Olympus, and just like, yep, I'm going to drop you down there into a pit that is void of all love and happiness, and that's where you're going to be forced to live as I take over the rest of the world. So he screams up to the heavens just like, oh, are you watching, Father? See what I learned from you. And at that point, Strife is like, all right, look, you're making a big deal here, but like, your armies just got trounced over on Paradise Island. Like, Themyscira took you out to lunch. There is absolutely no way that you're going to be able to like completely take over the world if that's all you got going on. And he's like, whatever, I'll raise another army. Screw it. And you know what? I'm going to show off my power right now. Minotaur, kill Wonder Woman. And so Minotaur comes over, is ready to kill her, but then all of a sudden has a flashback to, I think, some earlier time where Wonder Woman spared him. And so he drops his knife, and Firstborn's just like, all right, if we're all just going to be useless today, sure, whatever. He goes over, rips off Minotaur's mask, and apparently he was unaware that the Minotaur was a Minotaur, and he has a literal, like, bull head, in, human body bull head. And he's like, oh, you are less than a man and less than a beast, so to slaughter you would be a mercy. And Wonder Woman sees this, and she's like, no, and we see that the Minotaur is killed. So Wonder Woman, she's like, all right, screw this. The cuffs are off, literally. She takes off her gauntlets, and she's like, I'm the daughter of Zeus. I'm the god of war. I'm Wonder Woman, and I'm going to kick your ass. So at that point, she comes in, she starts throwing punches. She manages to punch through Firstborn's chest, and she says, of course, let my friends go. To which, because they're being dangled over a pit, he's like, very poor choice of words, and he drops them into the pit. Wonder Woman freaks out, but Hermes manages to teleport in, grab hold of them, because I guess he's not killed, just stabbed through the stomach, and make sure they're safe, and then says, all right, Diana, he doesn't deserve mercy, take him out. So she manages to rip out a bunch of his, like, vein tendril things, wrap him up in them, and then also wrap him up inside of the lasso of truth. I mean, she's like, oh, you scream for love. You wanted to be loved so badly, but it requires nurturing and above all submission. So let me show you what that's all about. So no, Zola and Hermes take the baby Zeke up to the throne, and they're just like, well, prophecy says that all you got to do is sit in it, so here you go. Whatever happens, happens. You're always going to be my baby. And he sets Zeke in the chair, and then all of a sudden the lightning starts striking everywhere. And Strife is like, I knew it. So as the lightning's striking, the edge of the pit that Wonder Woman and Firstborn are fighting on chips off, starts falling down into it. For some reason, despite the fact that Firstborn has the upper hand, like he's on the high ground, he's like, oh, not again, father, not alone. Wonder Woman will come with me. And Wonder Woman says, Firstborn, give me your hand. And he's like, what? You're offering me friendship as we plummet down into this pit? You're going to be my friend forever? You're showing me love? And she's like, yeah, I am. And she takes hold of his hand and then flips him off into the pit even deeper. She says, tough love, hope you'll understand. And so he goes down in the pit forever, or apparently at least another 7,000 years. And Wonder Woman just flies out, because of course she can fly. So Wonder Woman lands back up to the throne, asks if everyone's okay, and then Zola turns around saying, thank you, War, for helping return Father to his throne. And Wonder Woman realizes this is Athena in Zola's body. And Wonder Woman's like, I'm sorry, was this all just a trick? Like, what the hell's going on here? And she's like, no, 20 years ago, I was born as this mortal Zola, and then I've just been sleeping inside of her until the time is right. And Wonder Woman's like, so what's happening? Someone explain the entire last 35 issues of this book. And apparently Zeus set this whole thing into plan, like they wanted to shake stuff up. They saw that basically Wonder Woman, Zeus wanted more for her. So they set this entire plan up where once Zeus disappeared, the Firstborn would definitely show up. Ares was already kind of faltering in his position. And so they concocted this plan together, and they told Strife about Wonder Woman's true parentage, and that would be enough to kick off this whole long chain of events. The baby Zeke is just the rebirth of Zeus. That's all it is. So Zeus is now back on the throne once more in the form of Zeke, and she's like, yeah, and that's you. It was a gambit, but you all played your parts, and now I'm going to give up this little last remnant of the humanity in this body and take my place as full-time god Athena. And that involves getting rid of her shoes for some reason. And one was like, whoa, wait. Zola's been cool. She's been a good friend of mine. Could you not do that? Could you free her from being your vessel, please? She showed me humanity, and the baby's going to need its mother, and I'm going to need my friend. And Athena is silent for a minute, but then you hear a little owl noise, a little whoo, and we see that Athena has taken the form of an owl, left Zola's body. Zola's like, what happened to my shoes? Where are we? Oh, hey, it's my baby. It's up on the throne. That's great. And she hugs Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman looks out the sunset and says, thank you, Athena. And the end. Gotta say, I expected more, because this is the last issue of Brian Azzarello's run. I expected there to be more of like a thing at the end. Like, you know, an epilogue to some extent. This is definitely like the end of the final battle. We got there, but then it just hard cuts and it's like, oh yeah, and then, you know, they lived happily ever after, whatever. I don't know, I kind of wanted just a little bit of a, how's Hera doing? What's going on with, like, Hippolyta? Is she still stone? Like, what? Tell me some other stuff that's going on here, man. Beyond that, it's a solid issue. I don't dislike it by any means. It just feels so lackluster for the finale of Azzarello's run. So overall, I mean, I can't give it an 8. Like, as much as this run has been very good, like, this it kind of felt like it was just kind of wasting time for a little bit as well. So I think I got to lower this one down to like a 7. It's a high 7, but like not even at a 7.5 though. I don't know. I went into this expecting this grand finale, and all it ended up being was I threw you into a pit, and then the plan was totally set another time, the end. Like, I wanted more. This should have been an oversized. This should have been an annual, honestly. So yeah, it's a little bit disappointing there at the end, but overall, if you're reading the entire story top to the end, I don't think it is a bad read by any means. Definitely check it out. Batman Eternal number 30, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fawkes, Higgins, and Seeley, art by Fernando Pasarin. So, last issue, Arkham Asylum blew up. This issue, Arkham Asylum apparently didn't blow up. It has the big beam of light coming up the top, but it's not actually blown up yet. And Batman's seeing this on the helicopter that he commandeered, and Julia's in this cave basically saying, like, it's going all the way to space, it's crazy, you got to get over there. There was a plane that just happened to fly through it, and now it's going to crash. All the systems are offline, hundreds of lives are in threat, and Batman's like, calm down, pull the Batwing out, set it to intercept, bring it down gently, like, I can walk you through it if you need me. And she's like, no, I got it, but like, look, we decoded the Riddler's message, something big's going on here. And Batman's like, okay, is Batwing on comms? Can you get in contact? And she's like, no, I can't. Something still big is going on. It's scrambling things. So down underneath, we see what's going on. Deacon Blackfire has taken over the Spectre. He is literally opening up hell. And we see all of these souls coming out, just bonding to him. Just like, yep, Gotham's becoming a part of hell tonight. Meanwhile, Joker's daughter is like, off to the side saying, man, I didn't mean any of this. This isn't what the Joker wanted. This is stupid. And then all of a sudden there's a person from the side saying, shh, hey, come with me. I'll get you out of here. This is not a place for you to be. Let's go. So she goes with. Meanwhile, Deacon is like, yep, it's all working. Oh, wait, hold on. Nope, here, it's all going wrong. And then up in front of him, huge form, is the Spectre coming out of Jim Corrigan. Just like, hey, this isn't right. And I have the ability to stop it. So he just takes all the souls that were coming out, shoves them back into hell, and seals up the crack. And that's it. He's done. And theoretically, that also takes care of Deacon as well. So Joker daughter gets out of there. Batwing manages to grab Jim Corrigan as he starts coming to. And all the tunnels start collapsing. They were only being held up by Deacon's magic. So as it starts coming down, Batwing shoves Corrigan into the tunnel, allowing him to escape, but Batwing's unable to get past the rocks himself. His hands are crushed underneath a big boulder as the rest of the place comes down. And we cut back up topside, where Batman sees that the plane is safely landed, right next to Arkham, surprisingly. But he looks over at Arkham, and it starts crumbling. It starts going down. And he's like, oh God, there's so many people in there. So he starts running towards it. Alfred, meanwhile, is inside one of the cells. He sees that the cell starts cracking, and he's like, okay, this is probably just a dream. This isn't happening. None of this is real. Meanwhile, all the other inmates, specifically Bane across the hallway, are just banging on their cell doors like, let me out of here. This sucks. So Arkham crumbles. The whole thing just falls into a pit. Batman is right on the edge of it. He starts going down as well. He manages to grapple onto something, and Julia's like, hey, we just lost all feeds of Arkham. What's up? What's going on there? And Batman's like, it's gone. It's literally just all gone. There were hundreds of people in there, but like they're gone. And Julia starts like crying. We see the Riddler message on the screen that Arkham is just a piece of the plan. And then we just get like 2 solid pages of just rubble, of just every, like, hands in the rubble, cars being torn apart, everything's gone. Then we go down into the rubble where Batwing is, and he's still pinned underneath all of the stuff. He's trying to call out to Batman on the comms. Nobody's answering him, and he's like, I'm losing power in my armor. I think I'm going into shock. I really hope someone can hear me. And then as the light starts fading on his Bat logo, he just starts saying the Lord's Prayer, and it goes to black. So yeah, no, they could totally kill Batwing right now if they wanted to. So as Batman comes up on the grappling hook, surrounded by cops, they're all like, hey, Batman, you're under arrest. Come up slowly, surrender yourself. Of course, Batman doesn't. He makes a smoke screen. He dives deeper into the pit. And as he starts landing on the rubble, she says, like, hey, or Julia calls in and says, hey, I'm running an ultrasound scan with one of the satellites we have left. We'll get you a map in a moment. Just hang tight. And then all of a sudden, popping up from behind is Joker's daughter with a crowbar and bombs on her chest as the explosive vest. And she's like, haha, check it out, Batman, just when I thought this day couldn't get better. Say hello to... And then Batman just throws her crowbar away, like her only bargaining chip. And she's like, all right, fine. And she clicks the button for the explosive vest and says, say boom, as a ticking noise starts. And that's the issue. It's a quick one. It's a very quick read, but I do remember on my first read through how much that Batwing moment really stuck with me, of him just saying like, guys, hello, anyone? And then as it just starts fading out, he just like literally says his prayers. It's a very solid moment. I'll give full kudos to that. If it wasn't for the fact that like I know what happens to Batwing, I would actually be very upset by that in a good way. Overall, I mean, it's a very well-drawn issue. I think pacing-wise it works. We didn't jump to a million things. We just stuck here at Arkham. We filled out the entire rest of like the Corrigan plot, the Deacon plot, everything wrapped up, and we're moving into whatever's going to happen with Alfred. So yeah, I'm going to give this one a honestly, I'm going to give it an 8. I think that Batwing moment, I think giving him the moment of like heroism and then just like really throwing it at him, I think that really works for me. So definitely worth checking out. Future's End, number 26, written by Azzarello, Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen, art by Scot, Eaton. So this issue opens up in New York City airfield where Key, or is it Locke? No, it's Key. Key and Coyle, who have since been hired by Mr. Terrific, are sitting there thinking, damn, man, how do we get wrapped up in this plot? This does not seem like the logical conclusion to trying to break into Mr. Terrific's company, but sure, whatever. And then as we see, Mr. Terrific's there, and he is there to welcome Bruce Wayne off of his private jet. And Bruce is like, oh, hey, Michael, I'm sorry, you legally changed your name to Mr. Terrific, right? Like, what do you want me to call you? And he's like, don't worry about it. Michael's cool. And he's like, great, super awesome. So, hey, I'd love to see the new U-Sphere. We just got to sign some paperwork first. It's a couple documents, state secrets and whatnot. But I've got to pick them up, and I'm running late and whatnot, so I'll hop in this red Ferrari here. And then Mr. Terrific is just like, bro, you can drop the act. Like, we all know who you are. Come on. And Bruce just gives him a scowl and just like, no, I really can't. Anyway, check you later. And so he drives off. Mr. Terrific tells Key and Coyle to follow him because obviously he's got a thing against bats now. So last issue, Dr. Yamazaki, that's it, figured out that Jason Rush was half of Firestorm. So this shows him as Jason re-enters the lab saying, hey, get out. You are not to step foot in here again. Jason's like, what? Why? And he's like, I have always had trouble getting my transporter to work, and I never figured out why. It always seemed like someone was sabotaging me. But you know what? I figured out who it is now. I know who you are. I know what you did. Get out of here. Your card's been canceled. Security will escort you out. And he's like, no, please, you're wrong. You don't understand. And he's like, nope, I don't care. Get out of here. Tell your friends. So security gets Jason out of the building, and they're like, oh, you better keep away from here. And he's like, but I go to school here. And then all of a sudden, Jason gets a text, and it says, meet me at Central Park Zoo in an hour. And he's like, well, may as well. Got nothing else to do tonight. Meanwhile, back inside the lab, Madison Payne has come in looking for Jason, and she's informed that Jason does not work there anymore. And she's like, oh, I just really need to talk to him to pick up some notes. And he immediately, Yamazaki's like, wait a minute, did you see her name was Madison Payne? Payne as in the guy who was selling secrets to the other side during the war? And she's like, oh, I wish people would forget about that. And Yamazaki just like straight up starts strangling her, taking her down to the ground, just like, your father's the whole reason my wife is dead, and now I need a human test subject for the teleportation, and you're going to do nicely. So then we cut over to Terry and Plastique, who Terry is showing Plastique Tim Drake is a bartender and saying like, yeah, he's the guy, we got to go get him. And she's like, okay, but like, yes, he was Red Robin or whatever, but shouldn't we go after like the Justice League? Wouldn't that make more sense rather than some rando who doesn't even want to be a superhero anymore? And Terry's like, look, if I bring anybody else into this and they live to see the future I came from, they might be the reason that future came to be. But Tim Drake here, his DNA is not in Brother Eye's records. He was never found. Therefore, he dies before that future, so I can trust him with whatever. So we're going to go ahead and talk to him about it. That's our only option right now. And she's like, but wait, I survive into the future. I was literally one of those robots. And he's like, right, and I got to kill you. And she's like, what? And he's like, no. I'm kidding. I don't actually have to, but you were assimilated into Brother Eye, so that always has already happened. Like, I can't get around that now. And she's like, I don't understand. And he's like, yeah, it's complicated. Anyway, we then cut over to Cadmus Island, where 50 Sue is talking to Brother Eye, and she's like, you don't like it that I'm just sitting here and you're unable to get me because I can shut you down with just a thought. And he's like, I don't really think about you at all. I'm kind of doing my own thing. You're not, like, I know you. And she's like, you don't know a thing about me. And then he pulls up her file on Cadmus Island, which goes into the whole thing of saying how they took a girl, gave her 52 strands of DNA, and they think that if they could get her back into containment, they could fix her sociopathy and absolute god complex, but ultimately she's not willing to go for it. And so she gets pissed off reading that. She's like, oh, that's all just lies. And he's like, I don't think so. So she's like, look, I can wipe you out of existence, all right? I can do that with just a thought. And even if I don't know every last little nook and cranny to go through, Deathstroke will be able to figure it out. And he's super cool with me. And he'll just tell me what to do. And then Brother Eye starts playing a video feed of Deathstroke talking to Brother Eye, apparently brokering a deal from the beginning, where he's saying, yeah, if I'm not going to help you get off the island, but I will make sure that you don't get deleted. And in return, when you do end up getting off the island, you're going to pay me handsomely. Like, I'm going to want for nothing. And 50 Sue sees that, and she's like, I think you're making it up, but at the same time, like, I was supposed to be his Robin. We were supposed to be a team. And then Brother Eye shares a fable of an old woman and a snake, where an old woman nurses a snake back to health, and then the snake turns around and bites her, and she goes, why? And the snake says, it's because I'm a snake. And then 50 Sue's like, I'm pretty sure that's the frog and the scorpion, but whatever, I get the point. So, Deathstroke's always been Deathstroke, he'll always be Deathstroke. And 50 Sue calls him out, says like, you just want me to kill him, don't you? You just want me to get rid of him. And Brother Eye's like, I mean, that's not my choice to make, but if when you're thinking it. So then we go somewhere else on Cadmus Island, where Grifter and Lana are. And Lana's super upset that, Deathstroke's a killer, and how can they trust him and stuff like that. And Grifter's like, hey, I'm a killer too, and so is 50 Sue. Like, we've all done bad things. And it's like, yeah, but like, you guys have other stuff going on. Deathstroke's whole identity is being a killer. And Grifter's like, well, he has a daughter. That's something. And hey, so do you. And she's like, yeah, but my daughter's long gone. And Grifter says, it's only been gone by 8 years. And Lana like looks at him, just like, oh, right, you can see through deception. And I think the implication here is that 50 Sue, biologically, is Lana's daughter. But they don't ever outright say it. So then we go to the Central Park Zoo. Jason arrives, and of course Ronnie's there as well. And Jason's like, what did I tell you, man? I don't want to talk to you. We're not doing Firestorm. And Ronnie's like, whoa, hold on. You're the one who sent me a text, bro. And Jason's like, no, I didn't. What? Grow up, man. We're not playing these games. And then Batman comes in. He's looming over him, and he's like, you both need to grow up. I'm the one who sent you guys the text. So here's the deal. The world needs Firestorm. You guys need to stop being little babies about this stuff and get over it. And they're like, but I can't. He trapped me in that form, and Green Arrow died because of him. And Batman's like, no, he didn't. Green Arrow's still alive. Green Arrow's building the whole thing over on a secret island. Like, I didn't think that you guys were going to get so butthurt by this for multiple months that you would quit being Firestorm, but you did, and now I have to babysit you. So get over it. He's still alive. The world needs Firestorm. Like, you guys don't even understand how strong you are if you actually work together. Like, Jesus Christ, just become Firestorm again, okay? Just get out of here. And then that's the issue. Batman just flies off. I don't know. I kind of like the fact that Batman just has to come in and say, like, your plot is stupid and get over yourselves. And, like, I kind of get that from Ronnie's perspective, but I still think Jason has a point. Like, being held captive in your own body for weeks? That's horrific. I don't think Batman really has a good leg to stand on there. Sure, things are bad in the future, but Jesus, come on, have a little bit of respect for him. Beyond that, it's an okay issue. It didn't have a lot going on with it. Obviously, it's not like an action-packed one. It's mostly just revelations and plans being made and stuff like that. But, I mean, it's not a bad one either. So I would probably put this at a... I'm going to say 6.5. It's still just got the problem of I don't feel like enough forward momentum is ever being made, despite the fact there's all these plans going on. Like, we're much over halfway done this book now. I still don't feel like I have a full grasp on what the main idea we're going for here is. Is it destroying the island? Is it the U-spheres? Is it whatever Stormwatch is doing in space with Brainiac? Or is it, as I assumed in the beginning, the Batman Beyond stuff and time travel? I don't know. None of it seems like the main plot, and therefore it all just kind of feels like we're spinning our wheels just trying to get to a solution rather than any one given one. But whatever. It's 6.5. Earth 2 World's End number 4, written by Bennett, Johnson, and Wilson, art by the entire crew. So this issue picks up with Barda, Mr. Miracle, and Fury breaking their way out of the World Army headquarters. And they're just running, they're dodging all the gunfire, everything like that. And as they get pinned up behind a, wall or something like that, they have to turn around and fight against some giant mech machines, and it's just chaos, but they are absolutely slaughtering the World Army stuff. And as the leaders look on, Sandman's like, this is bad. But then, what's his name? Terry Sloan is just like, every time that they show their strength, they reveal a weakness as well. Let's go talk to him. So Terry flies out. He tells him it's a ceasefire. He's calling off the troops. And Mr. Miracle, despite Barda and Fury being like, let's go, man, let's square up, let's fight, Mr. Miracle's like, we're not enemies. Let's talk this out. So Commander Khan basically says, look, we agree, you're good. We know that a nuke attack is probably not going to work, but we want to trade. So we will give you back your mother box if you tell us how to take out Apocalypse. And Mr. Miracle's like, you can't. You're going to lose. That's literally just how it's going to be. But Barda says there is one way, but a lot of your people are going to die. So then we go over to Switzerland where, Batman, Red Tornado, the whole crew is recovering from their fights and all that. And we see Batman's talking to Helena like, do you wish you would have stayed on Earth Zero now? And she's like, oh, I don't know. Do you wish I would have? Val-Zod comes over and gives some kale to Power Girl to try to get her energy up. But then Batman's like, all right, look, you guys are wasting time with the cutesy stuff. We need to salvage what we can, and we need to figure out how we're going to get down into the fire pit. So Val-Zod, you know science, step on up. So we go over to Crane's laboratory at the World Army headquarters, which is where the mother box is. And Mr. Miracle's like, hey, man, what'd you do with my box? What's going on? He's talking to the robot Crane. And he's like, yes, I gave it to Jimmy Olsen. And Jimmy Olsen just walks in and he's holding the mother box. He's like, hey, how's it going? I believe this is yours. And Mr. Miracle's like, bro, you shouldn't be able to touch that. How in the hell is this? You've been chosen. You're a chosen one now. And Jimmy's like, cool. For what? And he's like, beats me. The mother box is like ancient and has its own thing going on. But like, if you touch it, you will be purified of mind and body. And so he uses the box to purify both himself, Terry, and Mr. Terrific of Bedlam's influence over them. But Fury's like, well, hold on. Why didn't the mother box purify my mind? Why am I still a little bit messed up? And Mr. Miracle's like, you have had an entire lifetime of being messed up. I hesitate to purify you because it's going to be a bit too much. And she's like, show me. Do it. I dare you. And he's like, all right, fine. So he turns on the box and she starts just screaming. We then go over to Apocalypse. And if you remember a few issues ago, there was a court of Apocalypse. There was like a bunch of like lesser demons or something that were all arguing over like what to do. And they're like, hey, we see out in the space or whatever between Earth 2 and us is the Hornblower. and the hornblower heralds the end of the world, and we don't know whether he's going to blow his horn for Earth 2 or for us, but if we hear the horn, we're screwed. And so they talk to Apocalypse, who seemingly is like a mortal figure that represents the planet as a whole, and he says, well, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to let it be. And everyone's just like, that sounds like a stupid idea. We should do this. We should do that. And they talk about like fleeing and going the other way and then coming back after the horn's already been blown. But then Apocalypse just blasts one of them and says like, we're not going to flee. We were going to welcome death. That's how the strong act. So we then cut over to Khan, who's getting a blast from Atlantis, the Queen Morella, Aquawoman. And she's like, hey, the one of the horsemen who represent death, she came down to Atlantis, she killed all the Atlanteans, almost all the Atlanteans, and then brought them back as zombie people. So Atlantis is pretty much fallen, but she made the mistake of leaving a few of us alive, so we are going to join you in the World Army with our own super weapon, and we're going to launch that crap, so have fun. And she hangs up, and then Khan's just like, okay, I didn't really have Atlantis super weapon on my bingo card, so could we please get Green Lantern over there to stop her before she causes like so much more chaos? So they call up Alan Scott, and he was over in Brazil dealing with the other fire pit, and he's like, yeah, I've basically burnt this place to the ground. It's all good. I'm nothing else is coming out of the fire pit. And I'm like, good, go to Atlantis, stop her from doing whatever. And as he's about to go fly off, a hand reaches out from the rubble, Solomon Grundy, and slams Alan Scott back down to Earth. Meanwhile, in Chicago, at the refugee camp, we see a bunch of other guys are trying to get the rations that Dick Grayson and Barbara have kept for their child and themselves. And Dick's holding on to it like he's the one holding on to the backpack. But Barbara's the one who's like, what you gonna do, huh? Come on, let's make a thing. Let's do this. Let's go. And they're like, stop hiding behind your wife, dude. And he's like, dude, my wife's more badass than me. I'm entirely going to hide behind her. But one of them ends up hitting Barbara in the back. And there's a big crack noise, which is concerning, but she does seem to be okay. She's back up on her feet in a minute after Dick says, like, okay, enough. We don't want to fight. It passes over the bag. And Barbara's upset about that, saying, like, hey, just because the world's gone to shit, I'm a cop. I don't want, like, this chaos to be going. I demand some law and order here. And Dick's like, none of that matters. The only thing that's important here is that we are together. We have to stick together for our child. So back with Mr. Miracle and Fury, Fury comes to the realization that Diana was her mother, Steppenwolf is her father to some extent, and Steppenwolf murdered Diana and used Fury as a weapon. So she's now enraged, but she comes to the point of like, look, you and I were both used by our fathers, Mr. Miracle, but yours is still out there and he has a debt to pay. So how about we make that happen? So we see Mr. Miracle and Fury approaching the rest of the group, just like, okay, this is a suicide mission. Like, there's no way this is going to work out. We can't stop Apocalypse. And Barda says, if we can get into Apocalypse and open the Mobius chamber, we have a chance. And he's like, that's a big if. That is a huge ask. And frankly, I don't think we're going to be able to survive a trip to Apocalypse, much less an invasion. And that's where Terry Sloan and Michael pop in, and they're just like, well, we're the two smartest men on the planet, so maybe we could help. And our final scene is back down in Geneva. Helena and Batman have gotten some suits, some big old metal suits that will resist the heat of the fire pits as they dive in with the rest of the crew. And as they make their way down, they see that the fire pits are not lava. It's not just molten rock. It's actually molten metal down there. They are using the metal as some sort of a refinery, a factory of sort down here. And as they start piecing that together, all of a sudden Helena gets knocked down, dragged off to the edge of a fire pit, and we see that it is Desaad, who was, of course, over in the world's finest book forever. He's made it to Earth too, and he's like, we're pretty familiar, me and Huntress here, but now I know her name's Helena, so bow to Desaad. And that's where we leave off. It's fine. It's an alright issue. I mean, it's again, every once in a while there will be an issue where it's action-packed and things happen, and then we have to pause for an issue and say, okay, we're moving the pieces around. So Mr. Miracle and crew, we're going to Apocalypse to try to take it out from the collision course. We got whatever Batman and crew were doing down in the middle of the Earth. Atlantis is doing a thing. Green Lantern's doing a thing. This is a setup issue. This is absolutely just setting up the pieces for the future thing that's going to happen. So all in all, not a bad issue, just not a lot going on. I think I'm probably going to give this one I'll say 6.5. It doesn't really deserve a 6. It's not that bad, but I couldn't, in my right mind, say 7 either. And that's it. That is all the comics published from DC Comics this October 29th, 2014. And yeah, not a lot more to say on any of that. Definitely looking forward to Halloween. I believe that's in 2 days. What did I say today? Was 29th? Yeah, 2 days. Halloween. I don't have a costume, but I do have a significant hole in my wallet from spending so much on candy because last year I didn't buy enough. And those damn kids will not catch me with my pants down again. That's a figure of speech. I really shouldn't be saying that in reference to children. Anyway, books coming out next week. Next week we have 15 comics coming out. Not a lot of big releases, not a lot of big things to note there. I will just go through them real quick. We have, in no particular order, Detective Comics, Gotham Academy, Grayson, Action Comics, Superman Unchained, Green Lantern, Aquaman and the Others, Earth 2, Green Arrow, Justice League 3000, Lobo, Swamp Thing, and our 3 weeklies of Batman Eternal, Future's End, and World's End. I think the only one that's a big deal out of all of those, well, obviously Green Lantern is part of the Godhead event still, but the bigger note there is Superman Unchained, which after a year and a half-ish since their first issue, this is the finale, the final issue. It took forever, but if there's one person that you can rely on less than Jeff Johns, it's Jim Lee on art. So kudos for getting it out eventually. Yeah, no, I really don't have anything else to say there. Happy whatever it is. Oh, wait, hold on. I just recognized next week is Election Day. I don't want to make that episode all about that, so I'm not going to, or at least I'm not going to consciously do it right now. So I'll just say it here. Go vote. Go do that thing. I know you don't want politics in your comics, so do it so I don't have to remind you. Go vote. All right, that should be it. Let's go ahead and just get all the ending stuff out of the way here. If you have anything you'd like to say about any comics I talked about this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and hit us up in one of our many social media platforms. We have a subreddit, we have a Discord, we have a Patreon. Links to those are either on the screen or in the description if you are listening to the audio version. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say for this week. So thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed what is hopefully a shorter episode than usual. God, I pray so. And yeah, I will see you next week. Be sure to interact with this podcast positively and always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.